Hi, my name is Rachel and I have a brand called Rachel Sees Snail Shoes. And today I'm going to show you how to make a pair of sandals for yourself with a leather outsole and leather heel and leather uppers. And it will look something like this. And I'll show you all the components in this drawing. So it'll have a main strap with a slingback strap and some toe straps that crisscross. Okay, so tools, you might already own these things: a ruler or straight edge, a hammer, scissors, a paintbrush for applying glue, a Sharpie, and a pencil. And then these three things are essential, and you might need to purchase a utility knife, a hole punch for leather, and a awl, A-W-L. And then these few things are optional. It's helpful to have an anvil. This is a rougher for scratching up leather. And this is a punch and a wooden mallet. Whoops. And you don't need to get these things, but it can make everything go faster. Okay, so material-wise, you'll need a few different kinds of leathers. For the straps of the sandal, I like 4-5 weight leather, like this oil tan leather. So I'm going to use this for my straps. Then for the leather that you stand on, the footbed, or sometimes called the top sole, you'll want really thick leather that's going to hide all the imperfections of the straps underfoot and make for a comfortable sandal. And then the outsole is going to be this heavy stiffened leather that we're going to shape and give some curves to and cut down to size. And then the heels will be stacked leather heels that almost look like wood. And then also considered materials are the little rivets we're going to use, the little studs with their screw backs, some tape, and some glue. This is water-based glue that works for leather on leather contact. So it's not very toxic and we can use it inside. And those are all the materials you'll need. All right, so I've made some paper patterns. This is my sole pattern and then a bunch of straps. And you can make up patterns from scratch. You can trace the sandal that you already wear. But I chose this design because I thought it would be really flexible. So 2 straight straps will be your crisscross toe straps. You'll have 1 main strap going over the kind of vamp bridge of your foot. And then we're going to attach a sling back to go around the back like this. So a long sling back strap and then a shorter sling back strap to attach on this side, and it'll have a little stud here. So those are all the components. So you'll need just 1 sole shape labeled left, and the flip side will be labeled right. And then 1 main strap, 2 toe straps, and these for your sling backs. So you can make paper patterns that loosely resemble this. But that's the design. So what I look for in my sole shape is just a little extra space on the sides, barely very much, a few millimeters. But you do want, like, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch in the back and maybe 3/8 or a ½ inch in front, just in case you need the space later on. We can always trim down the edges of a sandal at the very end, but there's going to be a little shrinkage when we shape the sole, so I like that extra room. And then you want to check your patterns on your foot and make sure you have enough paper to go all the way through these slots we're going to create. And so you kind of bend the paper, place it where it looks best. You want to show maybe 4 toes, but never 5. Because then you might push through the sandal. So you bend the paper and you can kind of make little marks where it's folding to give yourself an idea of how long the straps will need to be. And then you're going to want at least 1.5 inches of tab to tuck underneath, okay? So about 1.5 inches beyond that fold line, I just make another little line and I'll clip this excess away. And I'm going to do the same thing with the main strap. This is going to be somewhere around here. This is just sort of a guess at this point. I'm going to draw my fold line here and here. And that looks like 1.5 inches, so I'll keep all that. And we don't have to really worry about the slingback straps at this point because they're all above ground. We can kind of work on that later. Okay, so I'm going to start with the heavy leather outsoles, and I'm going to trace a right and a left sole shape onto this material. And just like this. And of course, flip your pattern. You don't want 2 lefts or 2 rights. Okay, so cutting this thick leather outsole material can be really tricky. You have to do a light pass and then a heavier pass and then an even heavier pass. And you have to be really patient and very careful. And if you're finding it too challenging, then one trick is to get the leather wet, which we're going to do anyway. So I'm going to just dunk this in this little basin of water very quickly. And that'll just make it a little bit easier to cut. But again, you're going to do the first pass lightly, just laying down the line, and then go through with more control like each time you cut it. And I just like to do long sloping lines one at a time. And slowly release the shape. Okay, and if you're lucky enough to have a tool, this is called a 5-in-1. It's a leather cutting tool. This makes it really easy. It's basically like a big can opener, and then you can cut heavy leather soling with ease. These are looking very flat, so we want to give them some curves to be more like, we want this arch support curve, we want a little bit of toe spring, so I'll show you how to do that. You're going to take the flat sole and get it wet in your sink. And we want to just, the smooth side's going to be the bottom, and the rough side's going to adhere to the sandal we build. So you're going to push manually when it's wet and kind of shape an arch. And that's like the middle 1/3, and it comes about halfway to the middle. And so you just force a little taco shape into that curve. And then starting at the broadest part of the toe box, you want to start springing it upward a bit. I like to overdo it. And then you're going to take your heel block, slide it under the back here. And you don't want it lifting off here. You want the toe to be grounded while the heel is grounded. So you just manipulate the leather to do everything you want to adhere to the heel block while giving you some arch lift and then having a totally grounded toe box here with about 1/2 inch toe lift there. And so that looks good to me. So now I'm going to do the same thing to the second one. So I like to just take the two and look at all the curves when they're side by side and make sure they're the same. Make sure one isn't curving more than the other. Make sure the arch and toes are about the same. And then we're going to set these aside and let them dry for 3 or 6 hours. You can always speed it up with a heat gun or put them in the sunshine. Okay, now I'm going to trace this same sole shape onto the footbed leather, the really thick leather. Again, you just want a right and a left. And you can use a pencil or a pen. It doesn't really matter because the edges of your sandals will ultimately be sanded. So you just want to choose something that will show up on the leather really clearly, like that. And then of course, flip your pattern and find another good spot on your hide where there aren't too many wrinkles or, well, this is a pretty wrinkly piece, but I think that will work for me. So cutting the thick footbed leather is similar to the outsole leather. You'll have to do a few passes. So first pass is just lightly setting down the line. Then the second and maybe third, you'll go in with more force and start to separate it. And like I said, these edges will eventually be trimmed and sanded, so it doesn't need to be perfect. You just don't want to cut it inside your line and make it smaller than you intended it to be. Oh, and I'm holding the knife close to the blade, of course not on the blade, but I'm not holding it back here. And I'm holding it like a pencil, and my hand is pretty grounded. I'm not holding it like this. That's a helpful trick. Okay, so these were our toe straps, and I forgot I was going to trim these down a little bit. So I'm just going to trim down, because I don't want to cut too much leather and have to waste the leather. Okay, now I'm ready to trace on the upper leather. With a lot of straight straps, rather than outlining each one individually and having to do tons of cutting, I like to just establish a straight line to cut against using my straight edge. And then I use the paper patterns to establish how wide I need the strap to be. And I use my straight edge like that. And I just cut against there. Of course, my fingers are out of the way. So that's for one of my main straps. Of course, I need 2 main straps, so I'm going to cut another. And then I need 4 toe straps. So I'm going to use this to determine that width. So this is a way to just save yourself like a lot of outlining and cutting the outline off, which can be sometimes a little tricky, but I'll show you the other way too. Okay, so when you do outline a pattern piece on the leather, it's so important to remove your pen lines. So take your scissors or your knife and just be bold and remove the line from the very beginning, because if you cut on the line and let it stay, you're going to have to recut it again with a smaller margin of error, and that's really tricky. So for instance, take your straight edge and set it just inside of your line and then cut the line away. You won't miss it, I promise. And then remember, we made these fold lines and we have these long shapes now, so I'm ready to cut these down to size. So I'll just trim off the extra leather that we don't need. And it's good to just flip your patterns just to get in the practice of it. Okay, and now we have our main straps cut down to size. Okay, so now we want to drape the leather pieces on your foot. Just focus on one foot. We'll apply these marks to the other foot, so you can pick either left or right, it doesn't matter. And you're going to be barefoot on top of your leather footbed. And I slid my heel under my heel unit under my heel just to kind of inform the fit of everything. So I'll start with the toe straps. So I'm going to just drape these over my foot, sort of where I had draped the pattern. Find the sweet spot where it looks the cutest and best. I want to enclose the pinky toe so I don't fall through the front. And I think that looks pretty good, actually. You can go as far forward as, that. And you could probably go as far backward as that. It's really up to you, so just find whatever looks best. I like to, this design lets the widest part of your toe box it gives it like that space to flex. So I think I'll go a little forward right about there. So you want to take your awl, and wherever the strap is landing on the footbed, you're going to make a little dot on the edge, about 3/8 of the inch in from the very edge, so like a centimeter in. And you're just following the natural way it lays and marking these dots 3/8 of an inch from the outside. So these are going to inform where you're going to cut slots for these straps to drop into place. And you'll notice that the straps are entering or hitting the footbed at an angle. So the slots are going to be longer than the strap is wide, but that's on purpose. And then the main strap, you're going to do the same thing. And you just want it to fall into its own place, not to overlap with where the toe strap lands, because they each need their own slot. So it's just something to keep in mind. And you don't want to put it so close where it's going to like hit this part of your foot, but the further back you go, the more secure the sandal will be. So I might choose somewhere around here. Yeah, I like that. So just try your best to hold it with one hand while you make those dots. All right, now we're going to take those holes I marked, and punch holes with a hole punch. And it's best to use a little scrap leather on the back of what you're punching. It protects the tool and it makes it so it cuts a real hole that you don't have to pull out. So, and if any of the dots you marked are a little too close to the edge, just cheat them in or out. And because your goal, remember, is to make it about 3/8 of an inch in from the outer edge, just about like that. You can see that. Okay, so now you have all your dots cut out on one side of the sandal footbed. And instead of doing that again with your other foot and having different results, we're just going to take these dots, put it face to face on the other sole like this, and using either a pencil or an awl, we're going to direct these dots onto the second footbed. So now that you have all of your dots cut out, we're going to turn these dots into slots. I like to draw lines first so you know where to cut. This is kind of a confusing one because we have 2 openings for the toe straps and then 1 for the main strap. You don't want to connect the wrong dots, obviously. So I'm going to draw 2 parallel lines to connect the sets of dots to start, and then you're going to cut those parallel lines by cutting 2 parallel cuts. So this is my technique. Hold this like a pencil. Start in and pull your line, but stop short. You don't want to make it all the way to that second dot because it's too easy to pull through the second dot. So you always stop short. And then you do the second cut, the parallel line next to it. Again, stopping short each time. And then you turn it around to complete these cuts. So you're again pulling away from the dot towards the other dot and meeting up with your lines. And then you should just be able to push this out and you have this clean slot. Even if it's not super clean and the lines are a little raggedy, it doesn't really matter because once you put the leather strap in there, you don't see it at all. So it's more forgiving than it seems. So I'll show you one more time. Once you have all of your slots cut out, you can start pulling the straps into place. If it's ever really hard to get the strap to fit in, sometimes I like clipping the strap at an angle and it'll be much easier to push through and grab, you know. So the toe crisscross. And don't be alarmed if the slot is longer than the strap is wide, remember? Because we probably want it to enter at an angle like that, so it's a good thing. Okay, so you have pulled all of your straps into place, slide it onto one of your feet, and you're going to start adjusting the straps to be snug, but not tight. And make sure your foot is placed well, not too forward and not too far back. And this will start to let you know how much extra you have underneath. And remember, you only need about 1.5 inches for each tab. So these are really long. So now's a good time to start trimming them so they're just kind of meeting towards the middle of the shoe, you know, and that there's no overlap. Yeah, this is getting a little better. And then keep fidgeting with the fit. And part of this is making sure that the strap really fulfills each slot length. So there's no gap on either side. And when you're happy, you'll just tape each tab in place so you can check the fit. And I like to use 1 piece of tape per tab so you can adjust them all individually rather than taping one whole piece holding everything together. So it's also helpful to grab your outsole and heel during this time, and you can stand on top of that, and that might inform the way everything fits together. And I don't know if you can see this, but there's like a little gap right here, and I want to fix that, and I want to show you how to fix anything like that. So it's just a matter of taking that angle and just changing it so subtly. So that's where the bulge is. So I'm going to undo this tape and basically just tuck that part in more and kind of force an angle here. Does that make sense? Like taking it from straight to angled. And let's see if that fixed it. Yeah, so now it's much straighter. There isn't like that bulging part. These are all looking good. I might do a similar angle right here actually, but everything else is working nicely. I like to be able to fit one finger in here, but not two and not zero. You don't want it so tight that it looks like it's squeezing your foot. But all these things, we're gonna tape it up, mark it up, and glue it. And even after the gluing phase, you can still correct the placement. You would just rip it up and redo it. So everything is still forgiving. Now that you have both shoes taped up and they fit the same as each other, we're going to outline where every strap lands so we don't lose this information. So I like to pick a pen that will show up really clearly on the leather that you use. So black Sharpie will work. And I'm just going to start by outlining what I can reach around the tape, including this line here, which I call the limit line, you know, just coming out of the slot. So in case the strap shifts around, you know exactly where to pull it. And then maybe one at a time, you can get rid of the tape, peel it up. And get the rest of your outline information. And sometimes I reuse the tape right here once you have your limit line already drawn, because then it can act as like a little hinge, kind of holding the leather in place while you do everything else. You know? Okay, so now everything is clearly outlined, so we know exactly where to scratch and glue all of our tabs. So scratching, you want to create texture on the leather so that the glue has something to kind of bite onto. So I just do little hatch marks in those areas that we designated. It can be messy, you can go outside of the lines, doesn't really matter. And you're going to want to create texture on the bottoms of these tabs too. So we'll do that to all of these areas to get ready to glue. Okay, so now we're going to apply glue to the surfaces that we want to glue together. And the way this glue works is you put it on both surfaces and then you let it get tacky for about 5 minutes. You can tell when it's ready when it goes from white to clear. So I'll show you how much glue I use. And it's fine if you get outside of the lines. You just want to make sure your lines are clear enough for you to see so you know exactly where to put the tabs down. Cool, so while your tabs are drying and the glue is setting up, you might want to grab your outsoles and heels. And these still might be drying, but if they're close to dry, it's a good time to do this. So you just take your heel block, line it up at the very back of your sole here. And then we just want to scratch a line where the front of the heel meets the sole, because we're going to give texture everywhere behind that line. So that's like hatch marks. If you just have an awl, you can do this all with an awl. But if you have this rougher tool, that can do the same job more quickly. And you just want to make sure to bring the texture all the way to the outer edge, because the outer edge is where it would start to separate someday with a lot of wear and tear. So lots of texture on the outer edge. And then you also want to create texture on the top of your heel block that's going to get glued to the sole. So lots of texture on here. Again, all the way to the edge. Okay, so now you have the textured bottoms of the soles, textured heels, so they're ready to glue together. And this is a good time too, if the heels were smaller than the outsole, you'd cut the outsole down to match your heels. If the soles were narrower than the heels, we'll sand off the extra heels later. If you made your own heels, that's fine too. I do that all the time. It's just stacking layers of this same thick outsole leather, stack, like about 3 or 4 layers. So I know it still seems like there's a little bit of white. It's been about 10 minutes. The way you can tell if it's ready is if you touch it and it doesn't come off on your finger, if it sticks, then it's ready to join. If it does come off on your finger, just give it more time. So I'm going to remove the tape that's been holding these tabs in place so that I can see my lines really clearly, and make sure that when I put it down, it's exactly where I intended it to land. And just use your fingertips to press them all into place. And then we'll check them on your feet and make sure they're still in all the right spots. Back to the heel and sole, the glue looks tacky to me, so I'm just going to line up the heel with that front line and stick those together, and maybe hammer this to compress the layers. This would be a good time to use your anvil. If you have one, you just place this over the anvil. Okay, so then slide your sandals onto your feet and make sure that the straps are all fitting the way you had intended, so not too tight, the same as each other. And these are looking correct. There's nothing, well, like the back here is a tiny bit looser than this one. So if you wanted to, you would just peel this up, tighten it a little bit, and reapply the glue. Wait 5 minutes and join it in that slightly tighter position. And also you want to use your actual body weight to help press all the layers together to help the glue adhere. And you can do that with your own weight, or you can do it just manually with your fingertips, pressing all these in together really well. Or if you have access to one, a shoe-shaped anvil, you would just pull your upper around the anvil and then hammer all the tabs, making sure that wherever you're hammering is centered over the anvil and not draped halfway off, because you don't want to dent the footbed. So that's another way to compress all the tabs. So now we want to trim the edges of the tabs so you don't feel them underfoot at all. And this process is called skiving. So you roll out the knife a bit longer than usual, like 4 blades or so, and lock it. And then I like to get my left hand out of the way by actually putting it inside the shoe and supporting it from the underside, so creating like resistance to cut against. And then I get my thumb out of the way by placing it on the blade like this. And then you're just removing a little diagonal cut to make all of these tabs transition smoothly into the sole, and constantly repositioning the sandal so that it gives you easy access to make your cuts. And this will take a while, and it's a learned motor skill, so it's hard at first, but it gets to be quite fun. It's kind of like whittling. You're just slowly removing material. And I'll keep showing you, but you never want to cut this line. You know, you want to keep that strong and keep the whole thing well adhered, so you don't want to like peel up what we glued down. So I'm pulling away from the slot line and just taking down these 3 corners. Okay, once you've done all of your skiving, you need to double check that you're not going to feel any lumps or bumps or leather tabs where it counts. So slide them both on with the soles just slid underneath. And I call this the Princess and the Pea test because you're trying to feel if you feel any little bumps. And I barely do, like maybe on my left foot, there's one spot I'll skive a little bit more. But yeah, they're almost perfect. So I'll do a tiny bit more skiving and then move on. Now we want to add some extra texture to all the surfaces that we're gonna glue. So the tops of the outsoles and the bottoms of the uppers. So you could use a rougher if you have it, and just scratch up the entire surface, especially these outer edges here, because like I said before, that's going to be the first part to start wanting to gap. The inside isn't going to spontaneously become unglued, so just make sure you do a lot of texture on that very outer edge. If you don't have a rougher tool, you can just use your scratch-all to do all of that. And then texture on the tabs as well, but don't like pull up the tabs that we glued down, like go in the direction that they're already laying. And then same kind of texture here. So I'll texturize all these surfaces and we'll get ready to glue. Okay, now just applying this same leather glue to the entire tops of the outsoles and then the entire bottoms of the uppers. And I'll wait 5 or 10 minutes for the glue to go from white to clear and tacky. So they're both tacky and ready to join. So I'm going to very carefully join the upper to the sole. And I just want to make sure to place it so that I'm not losing, you know, material on the front or the back or something. So I'm going to kind of hover it in place, and I'll start at the toe. I guess I like to overshoot past the outsole just by a few millimeters. And then kind of keep the shape, the toe spring that we created, and you can kind of exaggerate it in how you join it. Okay, and then you go around the whole outside edge and just pinch these layers together, and soon we're going to hammer it together as well. But the reason I overshoot it in the front is because there will be a little extra in the back, because the outsole shrinks a little bit when you get it wet, so you just want to split the difference. Okay, so on top of just giving it a lot of hand massaging to make the layers join, it helps to use a hammer. And I like to hammer over a table leg. So just some hits all the way around, wherever you can reach with the hammer. And then, of course, putting your foot in it and compressing the inside will work as well. And if you have a shoe anvil, it'll be even easier to get all the inside hits. So remember how the sole, we made the sole a little longer than necessary? That was a good thing because the outsole always shrinks a tiny bit, so you'll have a little extra maybe at the heel of the footbed leather, or sometimes at the toe, but now we can trim that extra off. So you can just do it on the table if you want. Like that, or like that. But this will get sanded later as well. So remember the slingback strap and the little stud strap? We're going to attach those now. We didn't really need to deal with that until now because that doesn't attach to the sole. It just attaches to the main strap. So now that it's almost finished, we can work on this. You'll take the long one. The long one always attaches on the inside. Hardware always goes on the outside. So you just want to insert it in here and find the best angle, whether that's kind of like low or probably hitting you a little higher about here. You'll know what feels most comfortable. And then just make a little dot where the rivet will permanently attach that long strap. And then you'll do the same on the other side with the short strap. Find the nice angle and make a dot on the main strap on the other side. Okay, so I've marked a dot on this side and a dot on this side, and I'm going to punch those out with the third to the smallest setting on my hole punch. I think it's like 2 or 3 millimeters, whatever corresponds to the rivet you're using. So scrap leather. Punch that one. Punch that one. And then let's also punch a hole just kind of centered on one side of this strap. And centered on this strap. And so you're going to line up these two, and we'll rivet these together. Line up these two, rivet these together, and I'll show you that in 1 second. Okay, rivets. So I use the small or extra small size speed rivets, I think they're called, or double cap rivets. So the way it works is the post goes, let's see, on the outside is the short strap here, and the post, the one that's longer, goes on the inside, and then the little mushroom cap snaps on, and same with the long strap. So long strap goes on the inside, post goes on the inside, and the cap snaps on with a tiny sound. It happened. And now you just want to make sure the angle is correct, so I'm going to slip it on one more time. And get your angles just right, and you can actually tape them when you've found the good angle on the inside so they don't move. So that one. So now I have the sling back at the right angle, it's taped in place, and I'm sliding this over the anvil, and I just hammer my rivets super flat. So no like rivet setting tool, I just go 1, 2, 3, you go through an awkward phase until it's super flat. And then you can remove the tape and do the other one. So now these are both attached, but they're both longer than I need, so I'm going to trim them both down. This I only need to be, I don't know, that long. And this one I'll trim about here. And I think it's better to have this click on to the longer strap. So I'm going to mark on this shorter strap where I want my hole for the stud to land, and I want it to land right there. So, and then while I'm at it, I'll just mark the underneath at the same place. And this is forgiving because we're going to make a hole here, we're going to put the stud here, but we'll give the stud maybe 3 variables to land on. I'll show you in a minute. Okay, so we want to create the little keyhole shape that's going to pop onto the stud, and if you have this punch that's the keyhole shape, then we can use that now in combination with a wooden mallet. So I'll show you how that's done. Over some sort of anvil, you'll place scrap leather, and then the strap that you're punching onto. And it takes a minute to decide whether the relief line should point forward or backward. So let me think about it. The stud's going to be in here, and it's going to be pulling this way, so we want the line to face forward. The line should face the toes. So I'm going to place this over here and tap it a few times. Didn't go all the way through yet. Almost. I'm not doing this over a table leg, so it's a little shaky. Great. You want to go through this, but you never want to punch all the way through your scrap leather. So here is the hole that we were trying to make. And then for the holes that will hold the stud, you can just use that hole punch again. And I like to do the first one that you planned, and then maybe one on either side of it, just to give yourself some options. Like that. And then let's just start with the middle one. So you put the back of the screw back stud into there, screw on the cap. And then I'll tighten it with a flathead screwdriver. Okay, and then the idea is this will snap onto the stud like so, and there's your slingback strap. And then if this were too tight, say, you would just unscrew this and move it to the looser setting, and if it was too loose, you'd move it to the tighter setting, and so on. You could keep making more variable fits. Okay, I wanted to show you what to do if you don't have that punch or a wooden mallet. You can just use your same rotary hole punch and rotate it so it's punching on the very largest hole. And I marked where we want our stud hole to be, and you'll punch that out. And then remember, the little relief line is going to point towards the toes, so whether you're more comfortable with the scissors or a knife, let's try the scissors, you'll just do a tiny little relief cut like that, and then see if it pops onto your stud. It does, so that works too. So your sandals are starting to look almost finished. They actually are entirely finished except for the sandal edges, which need to be sanded. And I believe that a great option is to take them to a cobbler and have them sanded for like $15, $20, because they have all the great sanding tools and edge finishers. Otherwise, if you have a tabletop belt sander, that's what I use, and it's the only sanding tool I would recommend for sandals, because you don't want anything handheld, because you have to already hand hold the sandal. So to hand hold two different things becomes like too vibrational. So you want something mounted, and you want ideally to be able to hold this with two hands and rub the edges against something and apply a lot of pressure. So I'll demonstrate how I use my sander, but yeah, you just need to take down those edges, and you can't really do it by hand with sandpaper because it's just not enough pressure. So you'll definitely need either cobbler's help or your own tabletop belt sander. after sanding, the sandals will be a little dusty, so I just like to brush them off as much as I can with a big paintbrush or a towel or something. And then you will notice that the top edge of the skin of the footbed leather doesn't sand off to the same degree, so we have to hand trim that whole edge all around here. So I use a combination of a scissors and a knife. I like to start on the bottom edge. I kind of, what's the word, grind down the edge a little with the sander, but I can't reach these two corners by the heel, so I just manually with a knife kind of bring that beveled edge all the way to the corner there and there, like that. And then back to that top edge, I like a scissors at the toe and the heel, the round parts. I feel like a scissors provides like a little more control to get those curves. And I'm just taking off as little material as possible, kind of at like a 45-degree beveled edge. But you'll find the scissors starts to run into trouble when you get to the straight sides. So that's when I go back to the knife and I continue that bevel with a knife. So here are my finished sandals, and I'm really happy with them. I think the length is right, and the fit feels really comfortable, and I can barely feel any straps underfoot. I think I did a good skiving job. Yeah, that's it. Well, thank you for following along in my class, the leather soles with heels sandal class. And I hope that you made some really great sandals that fit you well. And yeah, I hope you like the process as much as I do. And if you have any questions, you could leave them in the comments below. And please share pictures of your process and your final work off and on your feet if you want, in the photos below, or you can email them to me. Yeah, hope you liked it.